Hello, welcome to Phil's Kitchen. Right, today we're going to be making French fruit tart, a broccoli, cheese and bacon quiche. So first of all, we've got some pastry. Alright, so we've all made pastry in week 2, semester 1. I've got a blend of flours here, so I've got some self-raising flour, but I've got some spelt. So what I've done is I've done a mixture of the two. I've done half and half, and I'm going to make the same batch, but I'm going to make some of it sweet, some of it savoury. Okay. Now we all know how to make pastry. Fingertips, rub it together, sugar in at the end, but for today we're going to use a machine. It makes sense to dice up the butter nice and small so it rubs in more evenly. Now for today, we're past all that, I'm going to use this machine here. So here's some I've made earlier, but to use this, it's just a simple blender. I can add my sugar now at this point because it's a cold mechanical machine, so I don't have to worry about any heat of my hand making that sugar go sticky. So flour, sugar in, and then now butter can go in. Okay. Once that's there, I'm going to turn it on. Now, the fat's rubbed nice and evenly into the flour, and now I'm going to finish it just by hand because what I don't want to do is overwork that pastry. And we all know overworking that pastry will develop the gluten, making our pastry tough. Now, for my sweet pastry, what I've done here is I'm going to use an egg, and I've added some water in there. I've got the sugar. I'm actually going to put in a little bit of vanilla as well, just for flavour, for my French fruit tart. Now, for the pastry that I made earlier, I've made this with butter, but I've also used lard as well. So I've done half lard, half butter as my fat, and that will make it a little bit shorter. And for this recipe, I'm just going to bind it with liquid rather than egg. Okay, so for my savoury tart, I've got my cheese, got bacon, I've got a pan on ready for my broccoli, I've salted it, and I'm going to add my broccoli just to cook. Now the key is with any greens is that you make sure you have a nice alkali water, we don't cover it, and you want that broccoli to be cooked as quick as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cook it in little batches so it keeps nice and green. I don't want a lid on because that will trap the acids that get released on it, and I'm just going to leave that to cook. Alright, so I've got 2 pans here for my quiches, one for my French fruit tart. I'm going to make a smaller version, a larger one for my quiche. Now it's just a ring and it's going to sit flat to the bottom of my tray. Okay, you could use some parchment paper on the bottom if you wanted, but if your tray's nice and clean, you shouldn't need it because your pastry will contract away and it shouldn't stick to the bottom of that tin. Now, just coming over to the ovens, both of these tarts will require blind baking. Okay, so we've got the smaller one, which needs blind baking because it's going to be filled with a custard. However, the quiche will be filled with a wet quiche mixture. So because it's moisture, it will stop that base of the pastry from being cooked. Okay, so that's why they both need blind baking. Both of them set to gas mark 4, which is 180 degrees, and they'll be ready just to go in nice and hot to keep that pastry from falling down. Alright, so this broccoli's ready. I'm just going to drop it into some cold running water, so obviously you could use ice here to refresh it. I want to stop that broccoli from cooking as quickly as possible. I'm going to get that back onto the boil for my second batch, and I'll leave that on there for a minute. Anyway, we're going to go back to the pastry. So, as I've always taught, I've got a butter knife, my fat and flour's rubbed in nicely, and I'm going to emulsify in that egg and that liquid using the knife. Right. So coming back to the savoury pastry, rubbed together, I want a little bit of salt in there. And I've got my water, I've got my knife, and I'm just going to add this liquid just to bind. Okay, and again, adapting this recipe from a normal pastry recipe with a wholemeal brown flour will require a little bit more liquid than normal. Okay, pastry's come together. I'm going to store it in the fridge. Well, which one is going to be the most appropriate way? Of course that one, because once it's chilled, it's got more surface area. It's nearly halfway rolled out for what I need. Okay, so I'm going to press this one down. Make sure you know which one is which, and I'm going to chill it for about half an hour to cool. Obviously here in the Hardy household we don't have the pleasure of a blast chiller, so the good old fridge will have to do. Okay, so the classic French fruit tart is custard, topped with fruit, depending on the region of France, and it is topped with a glaze, could be red glaze, orange glaze, depending on that finishing technique you want. I'm going to do mine with a twist. So we looked at making our own tarts within this week. I'm going to mix it up, and I'm going to, from this condensed milk, I'm going to make a fudge like on a millionaire shortbread. So in here I've got the tin of condensed milk, 150 gram of butter, 150 gram of sugar, and once it comes to the boil, I'm going to just let it boil for about 4 to 5 minutes till it starts to thicken up. So now, 4 or 5 minutes later, it's starting to thicken up, and you can see, look, it's looking like a fudge style consistency, and that'll just sit in the bottom of my blind baked tart case. Just be very careful, because it will very easily start sticking to the side of the pan and caramelising. Okay guys, so pastry's ready, it's chilled, nice and cold. I'm going to roll it out and line this tart case. So I'm going to put a bit of flour down, nice height on my dusting, so it spreads nice and evenly. And I want to make sure that this is nicely floured. What I don't want is it to stick in any form, because otherwise what's going to happen? I'm going to have to re-roll it, it's going to develop the gluten, and I'm going to be in for a bad time. So as I'm rolling it, I'm going to just make sure that underneath is well floured. Because it's got the sugar inside for this French fruit tart, it is going to be a little bit stickier because of that sugar content. And the depth of this tart, of the pastry, wants to be about a pound coin. Any thicker and it will be a little bit too thick and crunchy, but you don't want it so thin that as you're cutting into it, it's going to just disintegrate. Okay. And then what I can do, look, it's quite a soft pastry. I can use my rolling pin and roll it round. But you can see, look, it's starting to stick. just want to make sure that it's not going to stick. Okay, now because it's only a small tart, I'm obviously not going to need this much pastry, but we're going to use the very centre part, roll it round, over onto the tart case, and then what I want to do now is just gently lift up those edges. Remove this excess part here, and I want to let that pastry fall down into the shell, okay? But what the worst thing you can do here is to be too rough with it, because it'll just start to crack. Now, if it did crack, I could just take a little bit of pastry and smash it in there and just stick it back together, okay? Alternatively, when it's baked and if there's any cracks, I can always glaze it with a bit of egg to sort of seal it. Alright, but the secret here is make sure you're getting right into that corner. Alright, so I'm getting right in there, so for one, when I cut into it, I'm going to get that right, nice little right angle on my tart, but also when it bakes, it's not going to have a curved edge and make the pastry shrink in. Alright, so now that's ready. Are we ready to blind bake like this? Yeah, absolutely not, because what we want to be doing is we want to be removing this excess pastry. Okay, and to do that, I'm going to just roll it over like so with my rolling pin. And what will happen is it'll go fatter at the top, but then I can just pinch it back up to give me a little bit more height. Alright, now you might see many a chef overlapping their pastry. However, that is the difference between your humble pastry chef making it properly, having faith within his pastry, to the chef who hasn't got time for doing that. Okay, so next we're going to get to the process of blind baking. So now I've lined my tart case, the next thing we want to do is to avoid that shrinkage, is we want our pastry to be as cold as possible, so when it starts to bake it doesn't start to fall down because it's getting warm. But another reason can be is that the pastry will contract. But what we can do here is we can put some little holes in our pastry that will help it with its contraction, but it will also stop the pastry from bubbling up and having a really uneven bottom. Okay guys, so I've put my little holes in there. Now it's time to line it with some baking beans. I want the baking beans in there to weigh it down and to also stop those sides from falling in on each other. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to layer it with cling film. You can use paper, I've seen foil used before, but what I like to do is use this cling film, because once it's blind baked, the little parcel in the centre, once it's baked, you can just lift up and take away and remove. And then when you come to use it again, you can reline your tart case and just open up the beans into your new tart case. So what I like to do is about 3 layers. I'll line it all on top of each other, and then it'll all nicely just press into the centre. Now here's some beans that I use. It's just bits of pulse and rice. I had them many years, but you can buy the ceramic beans at the likes of Lakeland or the cook shops, but they're quite expensive for what they are. They cost you about 80p for the bag, and it can last you a lifetime essentially. Okay, once those beans are in, make sure they are pressing right to the bottom. One thing that is essential as well is that you make sure that your tart isn't getting pressed down, but also if you're batch baking items, you don't want your beans to be hot while they go into your pastry, because it's obviously going to make your pastry start to melt. Okay, there's a little bit of air trapped in there, so I'm just going to open that up. But when that's blind baked, that bag will have contracted in and I can just lift it out and away. So now I'm happy with that. I'm happy it's not going to shrink. This can go into your oven at 180 to blind bake. So my savoury tart case I've pre-prepared in good fashion, and I'm going to take it out of the oven. And as you can see, it's got a nice shape, the sides nice and square, it hasn't shrunk, it's fully dried out and cooked through, because I don't want it to be raw anyway where the filling of my quiche is going to stop it from cooking. So I took the beans out. What I'm going to do now is lower my oven temperature, and I want it now probably about 150, not too hot because I don't want my eggs to start to souffle and coagulate too harshly at a heavy heat. So once that's ready, I've got some fillings that I prepared earlier as well. So we've got broccoli. I'm just going to scatter in. Doesn't matter at this point that it's hot because it's going to go back in the oven. It could be cold, so you could pre-make your tart case and leave it to go cold. The only difference is if it was cold, it was going to take a little bit longer to cook. So that's in there. Got some grated cheese that I'm going to put throughout my filling. I've got some bacon, so obviously we can leave this out for those vegetarians amongst us. But you can see that tart case, because of that blend of flour, it's got a nice brown rich colour there. Some more nutrients in there, more fibre from the flour, so the wife will be happy. Once my filling's in there, I'm going to then add my quiche mixture. Now in here is just a litre of liquid, and I've done half double cream, half milk. I've put a teaspoon of whole grain mustard in there for flavour. I've seasoned it, and for every pint of liquid you want 8 eggs. And that should give you a nice set. So once that's in there, I'm going to fill that in. It wants to be just to the top, just the right amount there. And what I'm also going to do, for a little bit of texture, bit of cheeky flavour in there, some toasted almonds just on top. But obviously, one consideration, the allergens. I don't need to pre-toast them because it's going to go in the oven and they're going to toast. And then I'm just going to finish off the top of my quiche with some cheese. Now, you could probably get away with a few less eggs within your mix, but because I've got very deep quiche, I want to make sure that that filling's going to set nice and well.
What, Henry?
Okay, quiche going in the oven. That's probably going to take about 30 to 40 minutes, but it will depend on your oven, whether it's a fan assisted oven. You might want the temperature a little lower than 150. Okay, so I'll put that in. We'll see you in a little bit. Okay, let's just check the blind baking of this French fruit tart. So the edges are nicely dried out. They've not contracted in. I'm going to take those beans out. They just come out just like that. And then what I need to do now is just make sure, like the other one, that it's fully dried out on the inside. And once this is ready, we can leave this to go cold as a shell, and we can put our lovely fillings inside and top it up. Nice. French fruit tart case must be ready by now. Let's have a quick look. There he is. Nicely dried out. Just starting to colour a little bit, that doesn't matter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in the blast freezer on my little window shelf. Just a quick one over here. So in preparation for the tarts, I've got some strawberries here. I just want to draw your attention to this wonderful Morrison's product, Mandarin Pieces. I opened them ready for our French fruit tart with the strawberries. Usually a nice wholesome succulent segment of mandarin. We just get mashed up Mandarin Pieces. But if we look on the product specification, like we were talking about last week, it actually says broken Mandarin Pieces in syrup. So read your label, folks. I'll just have a look at this quiche. I don't think it's going to be quite ready, but if we take a look, it's just starting to set around the outside, but you can see there, give it that jiggle, it shouldn't be wet in the centre. Okay, so probably maybe another 15 minutes on that. So I've removed the ring, nice and cold now, and what I've done is I've just taken some jam, I've put a splash of water in there and I've heated it in the microwave just to knock it back and make a glaze essentially that I'm going to put on top. I'm using one of these plastic pastry brushes here because someone stole my bloody pastry brush. Anyway, I've got my caramel ready, look, that'll be a lovely filling in place of the custard, a lovely fusion product. And what I've done here is I've just boiled the kettle nice and hot with boiling water, because what's going to happen is it will nicely repel this hot caramel and I'll be able to smooth it right into my tart case. Just get it nice and hot. You can see here, just drop a nice bit in there, a little bit more. Okay, be very, very rich. I don't need too much in there. I don't need it right to the top. But as you can see there, you use that hot water just to smooth out. And the beauty about this as a substitution is when I cut into that tart, it's still going to hold its shape. So I can cut a lovely slice out for the missus tonight and it'll stand proud and she'll be loving it. Anyway, I'm just going to get my Mandarin Pieces. I'll use these as the centerpiece. I think I'll use the only segment that was found in there as the central point. But what you want to do is you want to get your strawberries, ideally similar sized ones, and get them so that they are a similar size. So when you fan it round, it somewhat looks symmetrical. Okay, and I don't need to worry about these gaps for now, because as I go around with another layer afterwards, it will fill in. But the beauty of this is you've got multiple ways you can do this really. You could do it randomly with the fruit, but you've got to think, if you're selling a tartlet and the customer is going to get that one piece of tart, then that's fine. But if you're going to serve this at a dinner party, you don't want different pieces of fruit on different segments, because then every guest is going to get a different experience when they're eating the tart. And obviously some of them might not like mandarin, for example. But anyway, I'm going to fill that up there. Get yourself a spoon. These are yummy. Delightful that. There he is, look. Got one last piece on there. And then what I can do is, this glaze has already started to set up a little bit, but knock a little bit more water back into it, and ideally what will happen is when this glaze dries, it should set back to a half set jam. So just have it back on the tart. All right, so important that your glaze is quite hot when you are glazing it, because it will be runny. See, when it gets cold it'll start to set up, so it does need to be quite hot. And the good thing about this, putting a glaze like this in, it gives it that lovely attractive shine to our product. But as I say, we could use an apricot jam, we could use a jelly, any form of juice that's been set with a setting agent that will give it that shine. Gelatine does give a really nice shine to a product once it's cooled and set, but obviously you want to look for a different alternative for vegetarians and vegans. Right, we're ready. Quiche is up. Smells delicious. Anyway, I've got him there. He needs to cool by the window, but I'll post a shot of a slice later on. There's the finished tart, nicely glazed. Don't forget, it's the finishing touches that make it count. Thank you very much for tuning in. It's been a pleasure as always. Keep on cooking, and I'll see you next time at Phil's Kitchen.